guys, I'm Siobhan.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're playing Never Have I Ever Doctor's Edition.
And you guys are asking the questions, so let's see what they have in store for us.
Okay, first question. Never have I ever slept through a page. Wait, you have?
Oh, no.
Honestly, pagers are loud and obnoxious, and they're designed to wake you up. Like, you'd have to be a really deep sleeper.
Never have I ever stuck myself with a dirty needle.
Ooh.
I mean, so for me, I would say this is probably I have never. I was doing some sutures, and I actually put the needle right through my glove, and it just barely nicked the skin, but it didn't actually draw any blood, so this was not really a high-risk exposure.
I really did have a bad needle stick injury. Oh, I just feeling stressed thinking about it. So this is a pretty dramatic case. It was a young person who was found without a pulse outside in the freezing cold dead of winter. EMS started CPR. They continued doing CPR in the emergency department for like 2 or 3 hours. The concept is you can't pronounce someone dead when they're cold because there's a chance that when you warm them up that they could come back to life again and have a pulse. And the goal was to find out other ways to warm the person other than just having a blanket over them and sort of heat blowing on them because it wasn't heating them up. So we actually were putting in tubes into the chest, into the belly, into the bladder to circulate warm fluids to try to warm up the internal organs. My job was to put in a femoral line, so a central line like I've talked to you guys about in the past, so it's like a massive IV but going into the groin. And you can imagine when CPR is ongoing, I was trying to hit a moving target with this needle, and unfortunately in that process I ended up sticking myself and it was a dirty needle.
Oh, I remember how scary that was for you.
I was terrified. I think like the adrenaline of the whole situation, and then you don't know anything about this person. I don't even think we knew this person's name at this point. So you don't really know anything, you have no one to call, and all of that fear comes in, like what if I am gonna contract a disease from them? So I immediately went to occupational health, and they were great. So they drew my blood, they were drawing blood from the patient, and they actually started me on PrEP.
In the worst case scenario, this was HIV, medications that would stop it from replicating.
Exactly. But I was fine. The patient actually got a pulse back, which is amazing. And so it all in all was a good outcome, but I was scared.
There's a bunch of amazing stories where there was someone who was frozen, basically. Just by heating them up and doing CPR, they're able to get a pretty good outcome, like at least bring them back to life.
Never have I ever placed an IV.
I would say technically. So have I ever placed a peripheral IV? No. But I think a central line counts because it's technically a giant IV, right?
Giant
it just
IV.
goes into a really big vein.
Exactly. Okay, we've got another one here. Never ever lied to a patient about how good I was at placing an IV. Like,
okay. Definitely.
Never.
Definitely.
Actually, there was a patient, the nurses were having a really tough time getting an IV in, and I happened to be coming by and seeing the patient, and they said, "Oh, can you do it, doctor?" And I genuinely laughed and said, "No, like the nurses are so much better at this than us. Yeah. We really don't get the training. If the nurses can't do it, you don't want me doing it, I'm just gonna put one of those big ones in."
Yeah. And never have I ever touched a running IV, like to silence an alarm during a conversation without telling the nurse.
Guilty. I have a feeling this is written by a nurse, so I think maybe, I don't know if we should be doing that.
Maybe this is something we should stop doing. Usually it's something like an occlusion alarm, so I'll just kind of like run through the IV and just make sure there's no kink in it.
Yeah, or like position the patient's arm.
Exactly. Maybe we should talk to the nurses.
I think we should ask. Okay, you guys got a comment below. Are we doing the wrong thing here? Is this annoying the nurses and we didn't know?
Yeah. Never have I ever been recognized by a patient.
I have. You know what? It happens in the hospital and rheumatology clinic, and even still, I'm surprised because it's almost like two worlds colliding. Like I'm in my clinical mindset, and then if I'm not vlogging, I'm not in that YouTube mindset. So it's a surprise, but it's a welcome one. I love it.
And we love meeting you guys in person. I remember one time that really stands out to me is when we were just walking through the streets of Singapore and we met Nurse Nico. He's like a traveling nurse from the States.
That was really cool. And also, we were doing the Routeburn track in New Zealand, and we met Ryan. He's a Canadian medical student who's studying in Australia. That was really cool. And another medical student in Kaikoura when we were swimming with these wild dolphins. So these situations where you don't expect, and you have these wonderful connections.
It makes the world feel so small.
Yeah, I agree. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Never have I ever fantasized about having an illness I learned about at school because I thought I sensed or displayed the symptoms that we had studied. I think that's going to be yes.
Definitely.
For me. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. We call this medical school syndrome. I definitely suffered from that. Sounds like you did too.
Definitely.
So my story, we were practicing our neck exam. One of my fellow students actually found an enlarged node on my neck. And of course, another symptom I had during medical school was fatigue.
Yes.
So I was very concerned with this node and all the extra fatigue I was having. So I went and got an ultrasound, and fortunately everything was fine, and I'm still alive to this day.
Okay, I had also a lump experience. So we were learning about Sister Mary Joseph's node, and this is like where there's an enlarged lymph node in the belly button, and it usually suggests like really advanced cancer in the abdomen. So I felt this lump. I was like, oh my gosh, my life flashed before my eyes. A moment of actual panic until I realized it was just a little lipoma and it was totally fine. But that was my med school syndrome moment for sure.
Yeah. But if you ever do find a lump, it's always safer to get it checked out.
Oh my gosh, like we
never
did.
Assume, it's always in, you get that relief when
don't write it off.
It's benign.
Absolutely.
Never have I ever experienced, is there a doctor on board during a flight? That's gonna be a no for me, actually.
But we did have, as a doctor on board, a bus.
Oh, that's
that
right.
That happened in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
yeah.
So we were actually in a tour bus, and right in front of us there was a car accident. And then someone came onto the bus and said, is there a doctor on board? So we both got off and went to go and see the person, and they were pretty badly injured.
Yeah. So we basically were just monitoring them. We were on the phone with EMS, and they had some questions for us like, oh, should we send the helicopters, or can we wait 10-15 minutes for the ambulances to arrive? We decided that we probably were okay with an ambulance.
But it's tough, right?
It is. It's tough to make that call. We don't have imaging, we don't have blood work, we don't really even have vitals necessarily.
Like you're kind of
we don't know the blood
blind.
pressure. So it's a weird feeling being out of the hospital setting, assessing a patient. You don't have the support staff that you usually have. You don't have the equipment. So, you feel kind of helpless. Okay, next up. Never have I ever forgotten a patient's name while talking to them.
I think so.
I think for me that's a no. No, it's one of my deepest fears. So I've always been very conscientious about like reading the patient's name, and like I drill it in my head as I'm walking to the room.
Luckily, we do have cheat sheets. Like I actually print out a list every day. I've got the patient's name, their age, their room number. So I always look at it first before walking in the room.
We always have that information on us.
So yeah, it's
not as big of a risk.
It's not as big of a risk, but I would say like for me, I'm definitely visual. So like I will definitely recognize a patient's face, but there've been moments when I'm talking to them and like their name might escape, but their diagnosis and their face, that's like what locks in for me. Never have I ever had hospital food that was actually better than what I prepared for myself at home.
Well, honestly, I don't think I've ever really tasted hospital food.
Same.
Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe we should experience what we're giving to patients.
I agree.
But that being said, I'd say a lot of patients are actually really happy with the hospital food. So shout out to all the food service staff out there. Thanks for keeping our patients fed and happy.
Yeah, and throw us a meal once in a while because we'd love to try it.
Never have I ever worn my stethoscope around my neck outside the hospital. Of course.
Guilty.
Yeah. We work in clinic. That's technically outside the hospital, right?
True, but also sometimes hospitals are quite close, or clinics in the hospital are close. So
when you're on Citywide.
Yeah, I would just walk across the street or get in the car and hop to the other hospital. and of course, sometimes for, like, you know, YouTube
Oh,
thumbnails.
yeah, of course. Okay, never have I ever had to restrain a patient.
Oh.
I mean, that's something we definitely have to do all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's something you don't take lightly, whether you're chemically or physically restraining a patient. It's a big decision.
Okay, next one. Never have I ever vomited while performing a medical procedure. No. Okay, next one. Never have I ever fainted during a procedure.
No.
But I know you witnessed it, for sure.
Yes, quite a dramatic one actually. I was at the very end of medical school. I was suturing a patient's head. They would have laceration. At one point, in my peripheral vision, I just saw this other student just faint directly headfirst into the patient's belly.
Wow.
So like landing like a thud, and the patient of course heaves upwards.
Completely unexpected.
Yeah.
Someone just lands on you.
Exactly, when you're trying not to
You're
think
getting
about
stitches in your head.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, I wasn't actively suturing, so that was okay. And you know, the student ended up getting up and was all right. The patient was shocked, but was really lovely and understanding. But that was very shocking to me as well. Never have I ever delivered a baby.
Oh, you're kind of in between?
I'm in between, exactly.
Yeah. One hand on the baby?
Yeah.
Or...
Well, sort of. Like in medical school, you're there, you help out, you know, you help to catch. But I definitely wouldn't say like I delivered a baby, which is definitely different than you.
Well, you know, I'm still gonna give full credit to the mom for pushing the baby out. So, you know, have I personally delivered a baby? Maybe not. Never have I ever diagnosed a stranger in a public place in my head without them knowing.
Guilty.
Unfortunately, it's just impossible to shut off that diagnostic
Yeah.
side of the brain.
You can't just turn off that doctor brain. If say you're on a bus or you're somewhere where you're just looking across from someone, I have to say I can't turn off the rheumatology side where I look at someone's hands, looking at, you know, swollen joint here or there. I can't help it.
I'm usually looking at the way people are walking, and you can tell a lot about a patient's health by looking at the way they walk.
Maybe we should make a video about that.
Yeah. If you want to see that video, let us know.
Never have I ever broken a bone.
Guilty. I was a wild and crazy youth, as you know. So I loved bike jumps and skateboarding and backflipping off swings. And I broke my ankle and my wrist before I finally learned my lesson. Never have I ever been mistaken for a nurse or a tech by a patient.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You too, eh? You know what? See, that's reassuring. Like, I think a lot of us as female doctors think that it's because you're female versus male, but I think the reality is that there's so many people working in the hospital that it's hard to keep track of it.
Never have I ever cried at work.
Oh, I have.
That's gonna be a no for me.
No way. Mainly just this one time after my grandmother had passed away and I went to go and pronounce a patient and I was in a whole room full of grieving family members. That was really tough for me because I was grieving at the same time. So I just sort of went to a separate room and had a little cry and then kept going with the day.
Mm-hmm. I remember that was a really tough time for you.
Yeah. You kind of personalize a lot.
I know there's a lot of times where I've felt maybe the tears coming. There's a lot of tragedy that happens in hospitals. I think for myself, I tend to process things later. So I think I'll just kind of hold things in. And then when I get home, I'm just really grateful that I have somebody who understands medicine, who I can talk to. And we do a lot of processing of these difficult situations at home. Never have I ever read my own test or labs before my personal physician went over them.
Nope.
That's a no. That's a hard no.
You're gonna get flagged. They're gonna see if you're in the system looking yourself up. You're gonna get in trouble. I was most tempted when I told you guys about that needle stick injury earlier, getting those results. That's when I was like, don't do it. I really want to. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not worth it. Never have I ever gotten a patient water when they ask for it without asking the nurse to do it.
I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All the time.
Why not?
Okay, never have I ever loved another specialty other than rheumatology for Siobhan and OBGYN for Mark.
I mean, yes, because I don't practice OBGYN. So you guys all met me when I was on my OBGYN rotation during residency, but I was actually doing a residency in family medicine. As much as I like OBGYN, I don't practice it as my specialty.
I think it was really tough to choose a specialty.
Yeah.
Obviously, I loved internal medicine. I really thought about nephrology, like with the kidneys. But rheumatology is awesome, and I'm really glad I chose it in the end. Never have I ever stolen anything from a hospital. What are those shady eyes?
Okay, well, is it stealing if I borrow some scrubs for a prolonged period of time? We'll ask the jury. Is it stealing? I have returned them eventually. Never have I ever experienced a case as crazy as Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. So, this is one of those things when a case is crazy enough, we just can't talk about it, so you'll never know. Never have I ever told a viola joke. I have.
Definitely guilty.
So all of you orchestral musicians out there are going to know that a lot of violists end up at the butt of the joke, but we love violists. It's
love
just, they're just jokes.
What's the difference between a viola and a trampoline? You have to take your shoes off before you jump on a trampoline. What's the definition of perfect pitch? That's when you throw a viola into the dumpster without hitting the rim. Swish.
What's the similarity between lightning and a violist's fingers? They never strike the same place twice.
Oh, that was so much fun.
I love this.
Yeah. Sorry we couldn't get through everyone's questions today, but if you guys love this type of video, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, write more questions if you have them.
Yeah, I would love to do this again.
Absolutely. On that note, be sure to subscribe, and that way, we'll see you in the next video. So, bye for now.